The boy was about to die. But what he didn't know was that by the end of this night, 3 different tribes would be willing to fight for him. The sun was beating down mercilessly on the scorching summer lands. The hottest day of summer 1803. The ground was cracked, the river was almost dry, and 13-year-old Dakota Rivers was breathing his last breaths. But first, he had to cross that river, and what was waiting on the other side of that river would change his life forever. Dakota's cramped stomach was writhing with the pain of hunger. 3 days. He hadn't put a morsel of food in his mouth for 3 days. The soles of his old leather boots were full of holes. The wounds on his feet were bleeding. One of the legs of his dirty dark brown pants had a big tear. His patched shirt had faded in the sun, almost turning white. But real death was coming from thirst. The smell of water reaching his nose was driving him crazy. The dry creek bed he had been following for the last 2 days finally met a river. But this river wasn't normal. The waters were flowing brown, rushing through giant rocks, and most importantly, there was something on the other side. Something that Dakota's childish mind couldn't understand, but his instincts were ringing alarm bells. He knelt and dipped his hands into the water. It was ice cold. Strange. Such cold water in the middle of summer. But he didn't care at that moment. As he brought the water to his mouth with his cupped hands, he heard sounds from across the river, human voices, and these voices were screaming. Dakota raised his head and looked across, squinting his eyes, making a shade with his hand against the merciless light of the sun. The scene he saw froze his blood. An elderly Native American man was stranded on a giant rock in the middle of the river. But this wasn't just being stranded. Blood was flowing from the man's left leg. The waters were rising rapidly, and worse, 3 wolf-like animals were watching the man from across the river, prowling like hunters waiting for their prey. "Help!" shouted the old man. His voice was drowning in the noise of the river, but Dakota could make out the words. "Please." Dakota's first instinct was to run. Strangers meant trouble, and trouble meant death out here. But the desperation in the old man's eyes reflected the loneliness he felt in the depths of his own soul. And then the old man shouted something else, something that would stop Dakota's blood circulation. "Gold! I know where the gold is. Help! Gold!" Dakota's head was confused, but the wolves were starting to enter the water rapidly. The old man would die, and Dakota didn't know yet. But the moment he would make this decision would change the fate of 3 different tribes. Dakota didn't hesitate. He took off his boots and dove into the river. The coldness of the water cut his breath. The current was strong enough to sweep away a child's body. But Dakota had been fighting to survive for years. This was just another battle. He knew how to swim, his father had taught him. But when he reached the middle of the river, he realized that things weren't what they seemed. The old man wasn't just old. As Dakota approached, he saw the leather and beadwork on the man's clothes, native clothing, and the tattoo on his arm. That tattoo was very familiar. "You." Dakota was speaking breathlessly. "Are you an Indian?" The old man nodded. "I am Great Eagle, from the Lakota tribe." Then he looked at Dakota with a sharp gaze. "You're a white child. Why are you helping?" Dakota couldn't answer because at that moment the wolf-like animals had jumped into the water. And as they got closer, he realized these weren't ordinary wolves. These were coyotes, and they were very hungry. "Hold on to me," shouted Great Eagle. "Now swim." They both jumped into the water. Dakota's small body was resisting the old man's weight, trying to swim against the current. But the coyotes were approaching rapidly. And just then, silhouettes appeared on the other side of the river. Mounted silhouettes. But were these friends or enemies? As the riders approached, Dakota's heart beat even faster. There were 3 separate groups. All 3 were wearing different clothes. All 3 had their weapons drawn. First group, Lakota warriors. Great Eagle's people. Second group, Cheyenne riders. Former enemies of the Lakota. Third group, a sight Dakota never expected, white traders. But these weren't ordinary traders. They were gold hunters. "Great Eagle," shouted the leader of the Lakota group. "Are you alive?" "Alive," replied the old man. "But the child is dying." Indeed, Dakota's strength was running out. The cold water, hunger, and fatigue combined. His body couldn't take it anymore. He was about to let go of Great Eagle. But just then, a young warrior from the Cheyenne group jumped into the water. Swimming quickly, he reached Dakota. "I got you, brave child," said the young man. "My name is Swift Horse. You are very brave." When all three made it to the opposite shore, Dakota faced an incredible sight. People from three different tribes, groups that had been enemies for years, were now standing together. But even more surprising, the leader of the White Gold Hunters approached Dakota and said, "My child, you saved Great Eagle, but there's something you need to know. He was the person we were looking for too." Great Eagle's face changed. "What do you mean?" The Gold Hunter smiled. But this smile wasn't well-intentioned at all. "What I mean is this. You stole our gold map, and now we want it back." Dakota's head was confused. Which side should he take? And what was this gold business? But most importantly, why had three different groups come here at the same time? This couldn't be a coincidence. Great Eagle stood up. Despite his injured leg, his posture was proud. "I didn't steal anything, white man. That map shows my ancestors' land." "Lies," shouted the leader of the Gold Hunters. "That map is our property." The leader of the Lakota warriors, a powerful man named Black Hawk, stepped forward. "Great Eagle is the wise man of our tribe. You cannot make accusations against—" But surprisingly, the Cheyenne leader Gray Wolf, father of Swift Horse, also spoke. "Wait, Black Hawk, maybe this map business concerns all three of us." Dakota stood in the middle, trying to understand these adult conversations. But then Great Eagle turned to him and said something shocking. "My child, you didn't just save me from drowning. You triggered the beginning of something much bigger." "What do you mean?" asked Dakota. Great Eagle looked at the sky. The sun was starting to set. The scorching heat was giving way to a cool evening breeze. "In this region, there is something that has been lost for a very long time. The sacred gold of our ancestors. The common treasure of three tribes. And I only know one part of that map." Everyone looked at him in astonishment. "The map has three parts. Each tribe guards one part. Lakota, Cheyenne, and—" He looked at Dakota. "Your people." "My people?" Dakota was surprised. "I'm an orphan. I have no people." Great Eagle smiled. "Do you think so, Dakota Rivers?" Dakota's blood froze. How do you know my name?" "Because you are a child of the Rivers family. And the Rivers family was the white family that made peace ambassadorship between three tribes for years. Your grandfather was the person who guarded the third part of the map." This information turned Dakota's world upside down. His family's history in these lands, the unity of three tribes, the lost gold treasure. But just then, the sound of horse hooves came from the distance. More people were approaching, and the expression on Great Eagle's face showed that these weren't friends. As the sound of horse hooves got closer, the leader of the Gold Hunters, Mason Blake, grinned. "Ah, they came right on time." "Who's coming?" asked Dakota. Gray Wolf, the Cheyenne leader, drew his weapon. "This is a trap." Black Hawk also took a ready position. "Blake, you lured us here." Mason Blake laughed. "Of course I did. I spent months to gather the leaders of three tribes and those map pieces in one place." Lightning struck Dakota's mind. Did you arrange for Great Eagle to fall into the river?" "Smart child," said Blake. "I set a trap on the old man's path. I wounded him. I knew his tribe would come looking for him, and the Cheyennes would come too because these lands used to be their hunting grounds." Great Eagle looked angrily. "You're despicable." "I'm a businessman," Blake replied, "and that gold treasure is worth millions of dollars. I'll do whatever it takes to get all three map pieces." The approaching riders were visible now. At least 10 people, all armed. Swift Horse touched Dakota's shoulder. "Little brother, run. You're innocent in this." But Dakota didn't run. Instead, he did something shocking. He stood next to Great Eagle. "No, if I'm from the Rivers family, this is my fight too." Black Hawk looked at him with respect. "Brave child, but this is very dangerous." "I know," said Dakota, "but I need to protect my family's honor." And just then, Dakota noticed something. Great Eagle was secretly handing him something. A small leather pouch. "What is this?" he whispered. "The fourth part of the map," whispered Great Eagle. "The part your family guarded. Your father entrusted it to me before he died." Dakota's eyes filled with tears. My father gave this to you. His last words were, 'When my son is ready, give it to him. He will be the bridge that unites the three tribes.'" But Blake's riders were now very close. and one of their leaders shouted something shocking. "Blake, federal marshals are after you. We need to leave this area." The situation had suddenly changed. Blake's face changed. "What do you mean, federal marshals?" The leader of the riders was speaking breathlessly. "News from Washington. These lands are now under federal protection. Anyone violating native rights will be arrested." This news surprised everyone. Black Hawk and Grey Wolf looked at each other. "Is this true?" asked Grey Wolf. Great Eagle nodded. "I heard these news too. President Jefferson is passing new laws. Native lands will be protected." Blake was furious with rage. "This is impossible. We spent so much money on this operation. The money you spent was wasted," came a harsh voice from behind them. Everyone turned. A man with a federal marshal badge was approaching on horseback. Behind him were 5 more marshals. "Federal Marshal Johnson," he introduced himself. "Mr. Blake, you and your men are under arrest." Blake reached for his gun, but all the marshals had already drawn their weapons. "Be smart, Blake," said Marshal Johnson. "You have nowhere to run." But Blake had made one more plan. He lunged toward Dakota, trying to take him hostage. "I got the child. Back off." But there was one thing Blake couldn't account for. Dakota was no longer a helpless little child. He had become a brave young man who saved Great Eagle, earned the respect of 3 tribes. Dakota jumped to the side, escaped Blake's arm, and Swift Horse provided him protection. "The child is under my protection," shouted Swift Horse. "Ours too," said Black Hawk. "Ours too," added Grey Wolf. Marshal Johnson smiled. "I see the child has many supporters here." Blake looked around in desperation. His plan had completely fallen through. "This isn't over," he shouted. "That gold is still out there somewhere." Great Eagle stood up and made a shocking statement. "Gold? What gold?" Blake was surprised. "The map. The gold on the map." Great Eagle laughed. "Foolish white man. That map doesn't show gold." "What?" "That map shows the location of sacred water sources. The water sources necessary for the survival of 3 tribes. What you thought was gold is our life." Blake's world collapsed. The operation he had planned for months, spent huge amounts of money on his men, was completely a lie. Marshal Johnson was putting on the handcuffs while Blake still couldn't recover from shock. But the real surprise for Dakota was coming now. After Blake and his men were taken away, the sun had completely set. The 3 tribes made a fire and formed a circle around Dakota. "Now," said Great Eagle, "it's time to tell you the truth." Dakota waited curiously. "Your father, John Rivers, wasn't just a peace ambassador," Great Eagle began. "He was also a secret agent of the federal government. He was working to pass laws protecting native rights." "My father was an agent?" Black Hawk intervened. "And a very good agent. He fought for our rights. His death was because of this too." Dakota's heart raced. "How did my father die? They always told me he died of illness." Grey Wolf shook his head with a sad expression. "He was poisoned by men like Blake, because he was reporting their plans to the federal government." This information deeply shook Dakota. His father was a hero, and he had died for it. "What about my mother?" "Your mother, Maria Rivers, was a woman from the Lakota tribe," said Great Eagle. "You're not just white, Dakota. You're both Lakota and white." Dakota's world was turned upside down once again. "Was he mixed race?" Swift Horse spoke with a smile. "That's why you acted so brave today. You have both the white man's justice and Lakota courage inside you." "But what does this mean?" asked Dakota. Marshal Johnson, who hadn't left yet, stepped forward. "This means, young man, you're the person the federal government has been looking for." "What?" "There's an inheritance left to you by your father. A large amount of money safely kept in the federal treasury on your behalf. And more importantly," Marshal Johnson pulled out a document, 500 acres of land purchased in your name, right here in these areas. Dakota couldn't believe it. "This land is mine?" "Both yours, and the common property of the 3 tribes. Your father bought this land so that the tribes could live safely." Great Eagle touched Dakota's shoulder. "You're not just an orphan child, Dakota Rivers. You're the protector of 3 tribes. But Dakota still had questions in his head. "So what happens now?" And just as he asked that question, drum sounds began to come from the distance. As the drum sounds got closer, Dakota saw more people coming. Women, Children, elderly, all members of the three tribes were gathering. "What is this?" asked Dakota. "This," said Great Eagle proudly, "is a ceremony held for you." "What ceremony?" Black Hawk explained. "The Three Bridges ceremony. A very old tradition, done when three different tribes unite. And you, Dakota Rivers, are that bridge." Women brought beautiful colored fabrics. Men prepared feather headdresses. Children gathered flowers. Swift Horse approached Dakota. "This ceremony is very special, brother. It's done only once a year in very rare cases. What do I need to do?" "Nothing. Just be yourself." When the ceremony began, Dakota had never seen anything like it in his life. The music of three different tribes was mixing together. Colorful clothes were dancing in the firelight. Everyone was singing for him. Great Eagle stood up and began to speak. "This child today didn't just save a life. He united the hearts of three tribes. Lakota courage, Cheyenne wisdom, and white justice. They're all inside him." Gray Wolf added, "From today on, Dakota Rivers is our son." Black Hawk also joined, "and our protector." Then the three leaders approached Dakota together and gave him a special gift. From Great Eagle, a handmade knife with the symbols of three tribes carved on the handle. From Gray Wolf, a sacred eagle feather, representing courage. From Black Hawk, a silver necklace with a wolf head on it. "These gifts," said Great Eagle, "will remind you of who you are." Dakota couldn't hold back his tears. "Thank you." But the ceremony wasn't over yet. The most special part was coming. "Dakota Rivers," said Great Eagle in an official voice, "with today's courage, you have earned your name." "My new name?" The three leaders nodded. "From today on, you are no longer Dakota Rivers," said Gray Wolf. Dakota's heart raced. "So what would happen?" "You are," said Black Hawk, "River Bridge." "River Bridge?" "Because you didn't just cross the river today," Great Eagle explained. "You became the bridge that unites three peoples." All the tribe members stood up and started applauding. Drums played. Women sang victory songs. Marshall Johnson was also applauding. "This is a very beautiful ceremony. But now let's get to practical matters." "What do you mean?" asked Dakota, now River Bridge. "Your care. You have 500 acres of land, federal inheritance, but you're still a child. You need a guardian." This problem worried Dakota. Who would he stay with? But the three leaders laughed together. "That's not our problem anymore," said Great Eagle. "He's now the son of all three of us." Marshall Johnson was surprised. "Will he be the joint child of three different families?" "Why not?" said Gray Wolf. "We have such things in our traditions. He'll live 3 months with Lakota, 3 months with Cheyenne, and 6 months on his own land." "And education?" Black Hawk smiled. "Federal school, native traditions, and land management. He'll learn everything." Dakota, River Bridge, felt excited as he listened to this plan. He wasn't alone anymore. He had 3 families, 3 homes, 3 cultures. But just then, new sounds came from the distance. The approaching sounds weren't horse hooves, they were wagon wheel sounds. "Who else is coming?" asked Dakota. Marshall Johnson smiled. "Ah, I forgot to mention that." A horse-drawn carriage emerged from the darkness. Inside were an elderly white woman and a young girl. "Who are they?" asked Great Eagle. "Dakota's grandmother and cousin," said Marshall Johnson. "Mary Rivers and her daughter Lucy. They're also listed in federal records as Dakota's close relatives." Dakota was shocked. "My grandmother is alive." The elderly woman got out of the carriage. Her eyes were teary. "Dakota, my son, I've been looking for you for months." They ran and hugged each other. Dakota's eyes were filled with tears. "Where were you, grandmother?" "In Boston. When your father died, the federal government didn't notify me. I learned you were missing last month." The young girl Lucy shyly approached. "Hello, cousin. I'm Lucy. I'm 15 years old." Dakota looked at her. Finally, he had one more relative. But his grandmother Mary Rivers said something very interesting. "Dakota, I didn't just come to take you. I want to stay on these lands too." "Really?" "Yes. Your father always planned to return here. These lands are our home, and I'm someone who respects native culture." Great Eagle approached Mary Rivers. "You are welcome, old mother. You have a place on these lands." "Thank you." Lucy also looked around fearfully. "Is it safe to live here?" Swift Horse laughed. "You're in the safest place, little lady. You're under the protection of 3 tribes." And just then Dakota River Bridge understood what real happiness was. Next to his family, among 3 tribes, on his own land. But the story wasn't over yet. The next morning, Dakota woke up next to his grandmother. The sun was rising, birds were singing, the warm summer air was breathing. His grandmother Mary was preparing breakfast for him. "Dakota," said his grandmother, "there are important things I need to tell you." "Like what?" "Your father wasn't just a peace ambassador. He was also part of a very big plan." Dakota listened curiously. "The federal government is trying to establish a new system that protects the rights of Native peoples, and they want to make your lands the center of this system." "What does center mean?" "A school where Native children and white children get education together. A trading center that unites two cultures, and most importantly," his grandmother paused. "Most importantly what?" "A place where both peoples can learn to live together in peace, showing the rest of the country that it's possible." This dream blew Dakota's mind, but was it realistic? Just then, Great Eagle entered the tent. "The grandmother speaks the truth," he said. "We've been talking about this with the other leaders. These lands could become something very special." "How?" "Because these lands are on the border of 3 territories. The trade routes passing through here are very valuable. But more than that, they could become a symbol of peace." Dakota was beginning to understand. "So we could build something here that shows the world how different peoples can live together." "Exactly," said Great Eagle. "Your father dreamed of this, and now you have the chance to make it real." Just then, the sound of horse hooves came from the distance again. But this time, it wasn't someone bringing bad news. The arriving riders were federal representatives. At their head was a middle-aged, serious-looking man. "We're looking for Dakota Rivers," said the man. "I'm Dakota, Riverbridge." The man smiled. "Pleased to meet you. I'm William Harrison from the Federal Land Commission. I came to talk to you." "About what?" "About your father's plans. And about you continuing these plans in the future." Harrison pulled out a map. "Look, this is the map of the entire region. Your lands are right at the strategic point." Dakota looked at the map. Indeed, his lands were in a very important location. "The federal government wants to make an agreement with you," said Harrison. "We'll help you establish a mixed school on your lands. Both Native and white children will get education." "Is this a good thing?" Great Eagle intervened. "This is a very good thing, my son. Our children will get education but also preserve their cultures. And you," Harrison turned to Dakota, "will help lead this project as you grow older." Dakota's mind was spinning. This was a big responsibility. But his grandmother Mary reassured him. "Don't worry, my son. We'll go step by step. First you get good education, then you help build this dream." Harrison nodded. "You're right, Mrs. Rivers. We're not rushing the boy, but this could be something very important for the future." And just then his cousin Lucy said something very important. "I want to help too. I got good education in Boston, and I want to learn Native culture. We can work together." Dakota smiled. He wouldn't be alone in this big project. But Harrison had one more surprise. "Mr. Rivers," said Harrison, "there's one more thing left to you from your father."
"What?"
Harrison pulled out a key, a safety deposit box at the Federal Bank in Denver that opens with this key. "What's inside?" "We don't know. It's set up so that only you can open it." Dakota's curiosity was at its peak. "When can we go?" "Whenever you're ready. But this could be very important. Maybe the 3 leaders should come too." Great Eagle, Gray Wolf, and Black Hawk looked at each other. "Of course we'll come," said Great Eagle. "If this will affect this child's future, it's our concern too." And so a journey was planned to Denver. During the 2-day journey, Dakota constantly wondered what his father had left him. When they arrived in Denver, the size of the city surprised Dakota. He had never seen such a big place before. The Federal Bank was also very impressive. Stone buildings, steel safes, armed security guards. The bank manager took them to a private room. "Mr. Rivers," said the manager, "your father was a very important customer of ours. He rented this safe 10 years ago." Dakota was holding the key in his hand. His hands were trembling. "Are you ready?" asked the manager. Dakota nodded and inserted the key into the lock of the safe. What came out of it shocked everyone. Inside the safe were a large amount of gold coins, land deeds for 200 more acres, account books from 3 different banks, and most importantly, a letter written to Dakota. When Dakota opened the letter, he saw his father's handwriting. His eyes filled with tears. "Will you read it?" asked his grandmother. Dakota read the letter aloud. "My dear son Dakota, if you're reading this letter, it means I'm no longer alive. But don't be sad, because you're not alone. The money and lands in this safe are for your future projects. But my real inheritance isn't money. It's the responsibility you carry. You're not just my son. You're the bridge that unites 2 cultures. From your mother, you got Lakota patience. From me, white justice. You can do great things on these lands. You can establish schools and educate children. You can make two peoples live in peace. But most importantly, always do what's right. Don't let money change you. Don't let power corrupt you. I love you very much, my son, and I know you will be successful. Your father, John Rivers. Note, trust the words of the three tribal leaders. They will show you the right path. When the letter ended, there was complete silence in the room. Everyone's eyes were teary. Harrison spoke in astonishment. With this money and land, Dakota, you're a very wealthy young man. So what will I do now? Great Eagle approached. What do you want to do? Dakota thought. Then he spoke with a determined voice. I'll do what my father wanted. I'll establish the school. I'll unite two peoples. Grey Wolf looked proudly. That's how a real brave warrior speaks. Black Hawk added, and we'll help you. And so they returned to their lands with new hope and resources. Over the following months, construction began on what would become the first integrated school in the territory. Dakota worked alongside the three tribal leaders, his grandmother, and Lucy, to create something that had never existed before. The River Bridge Academy welcomed its first students the following autumn. Children from three tribes learned alongside white children from neighboring settlements. They studied mathematics and English in the morning, traditional crafts and native languages in the afternoon. Dakota, now 15, served as a student leader and translator, helping bridge the gaps between different cultures and languages. His grandmother Mary managed the practical affairs, while Lucy taught reading and writing. Great Eagle became the school's storyteller, sharing ancient legends with wide-eyed children of all backgrounds. Grey Wolf taught traditional hunting and survival skills. Black Hawk led lessons in diplomacy and peaceful conflict resolution. As word spread about the remarkable success of the River Bridge Academy, families began settling in the area. A small town grew up around the school, with people from different backgrounds living and working together in harmony. Marshall Johnson, who had decided to stay in the region, often remarked that he had never seen anything like it. This place, he would tell visitors, is proof that people can live together in peace when they choose to see what unites them rather than what divides them. 5 years later, Dakota stood once again by the river where it all began. He was now 20 years old, tall and strong, with the wisdom that comes from bringing people together. The academy had grown into a thriving institution, attracting students and teachers from across the territory. He was no longer alone by the river. Beside him stood Sarah, a teacher who had come from the east to work at the academy and had stayed to build a life with him. They were planning to marry in the spring, in a ceremony that would blend traditions from both cultures. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't jumped into that river that day? Sarah asked, watching the water flow past them. Dakota smiled, his hand touching the sacred necklace he still wore. I don't wonder about it, he said. I know exactly what would have happened. I would have died, not just physically but in every way that mattered. That river gave me everything I have now. Great Eagle, now very elderly but still sharp, approached them slowly. River Bridge, he said, using the name that had become Dakota's legal name. There is something we must tell you. What is it, grandfather? The three tribes have decided to give you our highest honor. You will be named the Keeper of the Peace, responsible for maintaining harmony between all peoples in this region. Dakota felt the weight of this responsibility, but also the joy of knowing he had found his true purpose. I accept, he said simply. That evening, as the sun set over their peaceful community, Dakota reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a starving orphan boy to the leader of a thriving community where different cultures lived in harmony. As he tucked the academy's youngest students into their dormitory beds, one little girl asked, Mr. River Bridge, tell us again about the day you saved Great Eagle. Dakota smiled and began the story as he always did. Once there was a boy who had nothing left to give, but what he didn't know was that by the end of that day, he would discover that love multiplies when shared, and courage grows when it serves others. And as the children drifted off to sleep, Dakota knew that the bridge he had become would continue long after he was gone, living on in every person who chose to reach across the waters that divide us to help a stranger in need. If you enjoyed this story, click on the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale from the frontier where destiny and courage collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us,